Welcome to ACC Nation, featuring sports news and special guest interviews. Here's Will Ojanen and Jim Quist.
Welcome to ACC Nation. That's Will Ojanen, and I'm Jim Quist. And thank you for letting us join you. Hey, a lot of exciting football over the weekend, but before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about Will's latest ACC football and basketball rankings that are available exclusively on ACC Nation streaming radio. We'll let you know how you can check those out. Let's talk a little bit, Will, about some of the things that prompted you, and we'll start with football and look at that. Who's at the bottom of the stack this week?
Football-wise, the bottom of the stack continues to be Florida State.
Florida State. Contrary to what you see in the ACC standings, where Cal is at the bottom, Florida State's performance pretty much overall has been less than stellar, and certainly I think Cal would be considered, I don't know if you look at it this way, but I think Cal's a better team. So,
well, it's like we talk about it, 4 losses by 9 points. You could easily, win those plays, and one play goes your way. So it's not like they're bad. I mean, they're definitely not at the bottom of my rankings.
So it's very interesting how everything is working its way through here as we get closer to the end of the season. And by the way, 4 weeks left of regular season play. So if you haven't gotten your fill in yet, you better do it before we get into the ACC championship. Let's briefly talk about the ACC championship and where it stands as of this moment. And is there any possibility that it might change from what we're looking at right now?
Well, we're looking at Miami and SMU, which I did not have that,
Your bingo card did not have
the bingo card at any point. I mean, and we'll get more into the reasoning, but yeah, some of the outcomes on Saturday kind of flipped that all over.
Yeah, we'll get into that here in just a few moments. Let's flip over to the basketball side of things because basketball, as we are speaking right now, is underway. The women got underway earlier in the day in Paris, where there was a tournament, and the only loss that has occurred so far was to a very highly ranked team by Louisville, losing to number 5 UCLA, and not a bad game overall, but the teams seem to be doing very well out of the gate. And we'll see a little bit more of the action, of course, as we're recording and as the evening progresses. We'll see how the men do in their opening, their tip-offs for the season.
Most definitely. I mean, like you said, every other game has been on the women's side outside of the UCLA Louisville game has been a complete blowout. I mean, a lot of games that have been decided by 30, 40, 50, 60 points, which tends to happen because there is still quite a bit of a talent gap between the bigger teams and the lower teams. And I mean, hey, we're still getting great matchups, as you mentioned today with the UCLA Louisville game. So
yeah, and hey, on the men's side, we've got a really good game coming up. The 8th, I believe. It's North Carolina and Kansas. Is that correct?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do not have my schedule up in front of me, so you're catching me off guard. But
I'm pretty sure that's right. I looked at it just a few moments ago. So, but that's a really great.
It's Friday, actually, Friday the 8th.
The 8th. Okay, great matchup, and that's at the beginning of the season too. So we're getting some really good games right out of the gate. Something to look at now. Unfortunately, we're going to take a look at who's at the bottom of your rankings in men's basketball. And I thought your explanation made a lot of sense to me. And I can see why. So they're going to have to work their way out of this position if they want to move up in the rankings.
Yeah, so full disclosure, I even mentioned it if you go to ACC Nation Radio that at least for the first couple months, I'm not going to update it very often because we're not going to glean a whole lot
Yeah.
from these outcomes. Winning these bye games by 30 points isn't really going to do much to move the needle until we start getting to the conference play. So I'll update it periodically, as needed. But right now I got Boston College as dead last, number 18 in my rankings, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just simple. I just, was it Jaden Zachary gone with Quentin Post gone? Maybe Post graduated. Zachary is now in Clemson. Um, I just don't see they don't have a lot of scoring power. And I just have a feel the talent gap just isn't there this year for Boston College. And I even mentioned this. I think you can really put teams 15 through 18 in a blender and sort them out. Like there's not a big gap between really the bottom four teams in the league to me with them, uh, uh, Stanford, Cal, Virginia Tech, Florida State. I think they're all kind of in that spot right there.
I think there's some surprises for people who are interested in those rankings to see where their team comes in and why. So if you want to hear that and get a feel for where Will thinks your team stands, men's basketball stands going into the season, simply go to accnation.net. ACCNation.net. You'll see the radio link there right in the middle of the page. You don't have to scroll very far. It's right there. Click on that. It'll take you. There's also a lot of other interesting stuff that's on there, including this podcast, which can also you can subscribe to on YouTube and watch us there and subscribe to us on the podcast and listen to on streaming radio. The guys from All Sports Discussion also have their podcast up on streaming, the streaming side of us. And I'm also working on something else here, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to pull it off, but if I do, we're going to get a ton of basketball loading up, and it's not going to be just the ACC. So we'll get a broader look at NCAA men's basketball. So hopefully, cross your fingers, we get that, pull that in, and add to what you'll be hearing on a regular basis. So one thing that I took away from your list was one particular team. Jeff Capel is apparently doing something right. So, and I just thought to myself, well, Jeff Capable. And we move on from there.
That's an e-slapper.
Yes, it's please smack the knee, not my face. Anyway, so basketball underway. It's exciting. We've got lots of sports action. Hey, and just as a reminder to everybody, we're not going to go over the other sports, the Olympic sports, here on this podcast. What we're going to do is have an additional podcast and run down some of the other action that's going on, because we've got, cross country, we've got soccer, we've got field hockey, and a lot of other things, swimming, wrestling, you name it. So what we're going to do is we're going to package those into a separate podcast that will keep you updated on that. And so be looking for that to be coming out here pretty soon. Let's get into football. Well, we have a number of teams that are already bowl eligible, and they include Miami, SMU, Clemson, Louisville, Pitt, Syracuse, and Duke. And as a reminder to everybody, the first college football playoffs rankings, the 12-team format, is going to be released on Tuesday, November 5th. So if you're not watching politics, then you have something else to watch, and that would be that release, which I think is on ESPN, which would make sense. And as I mentioned earlier, 4 weeks left of the regular season. And it really does look like we're going to have Miami and SMU in the ACC championship. We'll talk a little bit as we go on that. We'll also get into the AP and coaches poll, which I think are fairly reasonable. I mean, there's not much difference. There's no difference at the top five, but overall, there's a little bit of difference with the ACC +1 teams that we have. Let's take a look at the games because we had some high scoring events in the ACC, and we start off with NC State and Stanford, 59-28 final score there. Stanford takes their first west to east venture for the ACC for a football action there with Tobacco Road. So
this game, well, I didn't think it was much of a game. NC State was up 31-14 at halftime. It was pretty much over by then. I've been touting CJ Bailey and what he's done the last few weeks. The fact that I think he's starting to figure it out a little bit. This week he was 18 of 20, 234 yards and 3 touchdowns. In his last 4 games, he's completed 72% of his passes with 9 touchdown passes. So it's I'd say he's figuring it out. And the Wolfpack ran for 281 yards in this game. This is a team that has consistently struggled to run the ball all season. Getting an effort like that, I think it's huge for the confidence of the running backs, the offensive line, and whatnot. But, Stanford, that's their 7th loss, so they will not be going to a bowl this year. And we didn't really realistically think they would anyways. It's just like the thing is the quarterback play has been so inconsistent. Yes, Ashton Daniels can run the ball really, really well. But when you have to force him to throw it, he is very hit and miss. And most of the time, it's more miss than hit. That will be definitely something he's going to have to work on in the offseason.
Up next, a real shootout between two teams. And one of the things people get into this, the ACC is a weaker conference and they don't have good football, blah, 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 blah. You heard it for years and years and years. But yet you have these sort of games, and there's several games like this week where it shows that I think that the conference has been, successfully working toward having more parity among teams. And so you get surprises. And this game surprised me. It was fun to watch. Miami showed me that they are a championship quality team with this performance against Duke. And it's not the score, not the battle up front, but it's the fact that they came out of it and came away with a solid win. I mean, their performance in the first half, you probably could scratch your head and say, well, we're playing Duke, but Duke's been playing some good football. And so it didn't surprise me that much. Duke just doesn't have the depth that Miami has. And I think that's really all this was about, because it was a back and forth game, fun to watch. And, I don't think anybody can badmouth either one of these teams, to be quite honest with you. Miami 53, Duke 31.
Not very often do you see this in basketball where games it felt like a game of runs, really. And you see that happen in basketball a lot, where one team will go on a run, other team will come back on a run, and then the other team will probably go back on a run. This game was definitely a game of runs. Miami started the game off with a 14-0 lead. Then Duke went on a 28-3 run to take a 28-17 lead. But then Miami closed out the game, outscoring Duke 36-3 for that final score. Malik Murphy, give him credit, 325 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he also threw 3 interceptions. So. Yeah. But in a losing effort, Samir Hagan's 9 catches, 139 yards and a touchdown. Cam Ward, 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. Talking about somebody who is firmly in the Heisman Trophy race. He actually tied Steve Walsh's single season touchdown record, which when I saw it was only like 29, I'm like, what? That seems awfully low, but Miami's always been a school that kind of built on a lot of good running backs. So I guess that makes sense. But Xavier Restrepo, 8 catches, 146 yards, 3 touchdowns. He actually broke Santana Moss's record for receiving yards in a career. So give him credit for that. I mean, Santana Moss was a great player at the
Oh,
youth, and
fantastic
this
player.
team this team is breaking records that have been held for 20, 30 years.
So at this point, you can say the U is back. So,
At least for this season.
yeah, we'll see how it that's the normal naysayer
Yeah.
approach to things.
But it's also realistic because, with some of these coaching moves that have already gone on with coaches getting fired, Shannon Dawson, their offensive coordinator's name has been bandied about as someone who is, in consideration for their jobs, and I think he's earned it.
We'll see what they come out of this season with. If they have a very successful season, and maybe even, let's be realistic here for a second. It's not out of the realm of possibility that this team could win a national championship. If it happens, that definitely puts him in the catbird seat. So, you can start asking for the type of money that he would like. Would he like to be a head coach? I think most people aspire to continue going up the ladder. But then there are some people who like to say, you know what? I sort of like being a coordinator, and I'm getting paid pretty decent money here, and I'm settled in with my family, blah blah blah, and we've built a program here that is really going someplace, and I like that, and I want to continue to do it. So you got two choices there. We'll see what happens. This next game, I'm telling you what, right now, the insanity that occurred on message boards after this game was just unreal. Syracuse coming out with a 38-31 overtime win over Virginia Tech. Honestly, guys, wow. Hey, congratulations to Syracuse. They have been surprising people all season. They have a lot of talent and a lot of capability and a lot of heart and soul. What happened? What happened to Virginia Tech?
Well, this has been a bugaboo for Brent Pry in his career as head coach at Virginia Tech. 1-11 in one-score games.
Hmm.
Just doesn't know. I guess he doesn't really know how to coach. In these close situations. I did not look to see what the one was. I don't remember what it was, but I mean like, here's my thing. Yeah, we're looking at that at the one score game factor, but the fact that they got there without Kyron Drones and Bashal Tootin, I think they did a really good job still on the road.
The backup quarterback was
The,
phenomenal.
yeah. And yeah, I get it. They blew a 21-3 lead. I get it. I get it. I understand that part. Um, but still, the Hokies still ran for 249 yards in this game, so it wasn't like there was a significant drop off offensively. They still ran the ball really well, be it Wish Lee and Malachi Thomas and a couple other guys, but it's they still had a real shot of winning this game. Unfortunately, they couldn't hold the lead, as I mentioned, but you know, I'm I think I think you have to look at the whole of it and realize that, your two best players weren't playing and you still took a team that is, has a better record than you to overtime. I mean, they Syracuse at home, with its complement of players is better, is significantly better than Virginia Tech without its two best players. So I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Credit to Syracuse again. Look, Quinn Allen had 3 touchdown runs in this game. They're now bowl eligible in year one under Fran Brown. So give them credit for that. And I think we thought that was a possibility this year. And speaking to friend of the show, Emily Laker, who is now going to be joining us in the frozen tundra. She is leaving her post in Syracuse to come cover the Vikings for the Minneapolis Star Tribune. So want to say welcome to the Twin Cities to her. She'll be starting in a couple of weeks. So looking forward to her coverage over at the Minneapolis Star Tribune.
Good move on her part. She's a good writer and good person. We enjoyed having her on the show. And
she even, this is a good point. She's talked about it on Twitter or X, or you want to call it, on Saturday night. 24 years. She's 24 years old and is now basically achieving her dream job of covering the NFL. And I think that's really cool.
yeah,
Like covering, you're getting to cover, the biggest sport, at least in America, not the world, but definitely in America. And at that young age, I'm very excited for her to see what she's going to be able to do.
yeah.
Because we got a good football team, folks.
Maybe she'll bring luck. How about that?
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. So you keep
Hey,
that.
I mean, you get to cover. You're about to cover Justin Jefferson. Let's just start there.
Well, that's worth it.
Yeah.
Every minute. North Carolina. First time Mac Brown has defeated Florida State. 35-11 final score there, and I think it left Mac with some emotions there that
Yeah, I was shocked to find out that was his first win against Florida State. I mean, granted,
long haul.
yeah, I can consider he coached, he's been coaching forever, but even the first time around at UNC, but of course the first time around, FSU was one of the programs in college football, and obviously they've taken a significant fall off this year, but that's for another time. But other than the fact that they have all but they are your opponent has quit the match. That is Florida State, I'm afraid. Um, let's put it this way. Omarion Hampton had more yards by himself than Florida State did as a team. Hampton had 265 total yards. Florida State had 201. Not to mention Hampton had 5 touchdowns in this game, 4 of them on the ground. And to talk about the offensive woes of Florida State, they've gone this deep into the season without achieving a 300-yard game in terms of total offense. And the weird quirk about the schedule too? This was their last ACC game of the season.
Oh, that's true.
Finishing 1-7. So they have 3 because they've got Notre Dame, an FCS school, and then Florida to close it out.
Staggering to me. I look back at the very beginning of the season, actually preseason, and our reviews of football, and looking at who was on the roster, the potential, and to watch this implosion, I'm still not sure how to wrap my head around that. I mean, I'm sure that we'll get a better idea after some time has passed and people talk a little bit about it. But
yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot that's going to come out once the season's over, and it's just the face plant from this program is just really staggering. But I think I think if they get their quarterback situation figured out in 2025, then I think they'll be in good shape.
So next up, we've got 2 teams that one who got bumped out of the top 25 earlier in the season, which I thought was a mistake because I thought they were better than what was being indicated. by the people voting, and one who I thought was playing, as I've said, basic football. And sooner or later, you're going to run into a wall here, and somebody's going to be smart enough to come along and snatch a game. And that's what happened. And the fact that it happened in Death Valley is even more staggering. The fact that Clemson pulled off a 33-21 win over Clemson at home. That was a huge win for Louisville, and it was also a huge loss for Clemson. Wow.
I'm trying to think the last time Clemson looked dominated in the fashion they did in an ACC game. Obviously, the game against Georgia earlier season doesn't count, but it's just they've been so dominant in ACC play over the last few years that I'm just coming to mind a game where they were like dominated in this fashion. Yeah, they've lost a lot of close games, but this was one of those things where you're just like, okay, when are they going to turn it on? When are they going to turn it on? And then they never did. I mean,
wasn't there.
I mean, credit to Louisville too. Their defense was really, really good in this game too. When you look at you look at it like, Clemson had over 400 yards, like 450 yards of offense, but they ran over 100 plays in order to do it, and they had the ball for 38 minutes. And this was one of those games where the time of possession meant absolutely nothing, because when Louisville had the ball, they were far more efficient. And Louisville averaged 6 yards per play, Clemson 4.5 yards per play. When Louisville had the ball, they were more methodical and efficient with it. Where I think I saw the stat, and Clemson, like Cade Klubnik had like 30 something completions, but it was like for like 200 yards. I'm like, when you're dinking and dunking down the field, that's not going to get you super far. And I would have to look at the game a little closer to see, was that kind of the game plan, or was just there's nothing downfield for Clemson. I want to get a little closer look at that. But we've mentioned Isaac Brown as arguably one of the better backs in the league, and as already as a freshman, 20 carries, 151 yards in this game. Louisville ran the ball for 210 yards in this game, averaging almost 8 yards to carry. And if you want to go back to what I just said a moment ago about being super efficient when you had the ball, there it is right there.
That's your classic example. And it paid off. So, there's all kinds of questions among Clemson fans talking, again, going back to the message boards, because that's where you find a lot of entertaining interaction. Some of it I'm bemused, but others I'm just like, God's sakes, take away the keyboard. Wow. I'm just, there's a lot of things about Clemson that for the last couple of seasons just has been flat. Now, you can certainly point your finger at Dabo Swinney and say, well, that's his fault. And, he does have a bone about NIL and transfer portal and all the other stuff. And we've seen it with other sports. When you're at that point, and let me just give you a really good example of somebody who was smart enough to say, you know what? I don't like dealing with this. This is not the sport that I enjoy, so I'm going to walk away. Tony Bennett. But there are other coaches who will just stay on and will try to put that, the square peg into the round hole, and they can't do it. And I'm beginning to wonder, at some point, does somebody have to knock on that wooden head of his and say, look, dude, you either have to be in the now because what was is no longer. Hell, Nick Saban knew that and has said it. He's, that's part of the reason he got out is because he was looking at it and going, I can't deal with this stuff.
Yeah. It's a
So,
sort of adapt or die.
yeah. So, I
And
mean, is he at that point where it's like, you know, yeah, you adapt, dude. I mean, come on. I mean, you love that program. It's a reflection of you on a personal basis. You've had success with it. Now go with the flow and adjust and bring it back to where it was, because that's the only way you're going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to play old school ball. You can't. You can't do it any longer. That's not the reality of college sports. Wake the hell up. And I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you're hearing out of Clemson fans. I think they're just coming to that realization that, seriously, we love him. He did us a lot of justice. He took us to a great place. But man, he is so stuck in his ways that he's killing this program. So, and God, I hate saying this. I really do. I have a lot of respect for him as a coach. I have a lot of respect for all of these people who coach because it is a damn tough job. And it's gotten more difficult, which is obvious. But come on, man. Either do or die, one or the other. So SMU 48, Pitt 25. Rhett Lashley doing a great job at SMU. I said at the beginning of the season, this is a team to watch, and damn if they aren't. Rhett Lashley is a good coach, knows what he's doing. The fact that they surprised the hell out of Pitt to the degree that they did makes me raise some, and I've had some questions about Pat Narduzzi for a while. And, when we talked with Chris Peak about this, I think he felt like, well, Narduzzi's going to be around for a while. Okay. Well, okay, fine. And he's made some adjustments as well, which has helped him, because if he hadn't made the adjustment that he made last year going into this season, he wouldn't be where he is now.
yeah, so I kind of wonder if he's going to have to make another change, because and I hate to be pessimistic about it, but it is kind of the way of college football now. I wonder, with all the success that they've had with this offense, if Cade Bell's going to get plucked by a bigger school, like to be their offensive coordinator. That's something I'm concerned about. But in terms of Rhett Lashley, there's definitely an argument for him to be ACC Coach of the Year. Probably, I think if the season ended today, Mario Cristobal would probably end up winning it, just because they're undefeated. But talk about the right person, the right situation here. Like, you got a good offensive-minded coach at a school that's got tons of money and will just about give you whatever the hell you want. And look what they're doing. And their one loss is a close loss to a team in BYU who's currently undefeated and ranked in the top 10. And your current quarterback wasn't the quarterback, the better one. So,
yeah.
So that, I bet you, if he would have played in that game, the situation would have changed. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, that's a lot of hindsight 2020 type stuff, but
right.
But as far as this game goes, total domination from SMU. They were up 31-3 at halftime, and it didn't even feel like it was that close. I mean, it felt like watching an FBS school play an FCS school. It was just that kind of domination for the Mustangs. Kevin Jennings, 306 yards, 2 touchdowns. Brashard Smith on the ground, 161 and 2 TDs. They just complete domination. And I mean, I don't want to go this far yet, but feels like we like they're probably not going to lose again the rest of the year, the regular season. They have a pretty light schedule from here
Yeah,
on out.
yeah, both they and Miami.
Hmm.
I mean, Georgia Tech is one of the schools can throw a monkey wrench into your game plan.
If they're healthy.
Yeah, and we'll see. Anyway, those are the games. We had a lot of people who were off. It's kind of weird this season. The schedule has is so many people have off bye weeks. It's really weird. It just you're not having that full schedule going.
Hmm. And I was just going to jump in and say, okay, the final 3 games for SMU: home against Boston College, at Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
home for Cal. They should be easily a double-digit favorite in all 3 of those games.
I would.
Miami, on the other hand, you mentioned Georgia Tech. They play them this upcoming week in Atlanta, so could be a tricky spot. And then close with Wake and Syracuse. So yeah, if
Yeah, I
Miami's
would
going to get
watch.
got, I think this is probably going to be the week.
Here are the two teams I think that they could do some damage. I think Cal and I think Syracuse. Now
Cal's going to have to
Georgia
bog them
Tech.
down and make it a defensive slugfest.
So we'll see. I mean, it's not. Here's the nice thing about it is it's not a gimme.
Hmm.
So it's worth watching.
It's
See what happens.
And sometimes weird things happen. So for all we know, both of them could lose, and guess who's right back in the picture?
That's right.
Clemson and Pitt.
It ain't over till it's over. All right, coming up
Okay,
this
Yogi.
yeah. Friday, it's Cal at Wake Forest.
It's an interesting game. I think you got a good defensive team in Cal and a pretty decent offensive team in Wake. Like, the weird thing is, I've got Cal as a 7-point favorite here, and I won't get anywhere close to this game, to be honest with you, because I feel like Cal can get there defensively, but their offense is so up and down, and this is still a game on the East Coast. So I don't know. I mean, wouldn't surprise me if Wake won this game, to be honest with you.
I'm going with Cal on this one.
Yeah, I get it.
Uh,
I just don't think it's. This is one of those ones where I think the point spread seems a bit high to me.
yeah. Next up on Saturday, we've got Syracuse at Boston College.
We're getting exactly what everyone wanted this season. Tom Brenneman calling a game on the CW with Thomas Castellanos.
There we go.
And there's a deep ball down the sideline, and that'll make it 24-0. Nah, seriously though, Syracuse now bowl eligible. They got their 6th win of the season with that one of Virginia Tech. BC still alive for a bowl, need 2 wins. They're actually a favorite in this game from what I see, which seems surprising to me, but I actually would take Syracuse in this game.
I would too. Next up is Miami at Georgia Tech, and this is the one that we said could be a surprise if, as Will points out, Georgia Tech is healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I would still think Miami would win this game, but do I think it's a blowout? No, I don't. Especially with this game being at Georgia Tech, wouldn't surprise me if Georgia Tech hangs around and makes this a game.
I'll take Miami in this game, but I have a soft spot in my heart for Georgia Tech.
I get it.
If they do well, bravo. I like their coach. Next game up is Duke at NC State. Now, this is a game that I'm interested in seeing.
In terms of what I think is actually the most intriguing game of the week, this one's under the radar, but I think this is the one. I mean, Duke 6-3. Obviously, we've seen them, be very good defensively. A good team that forces a lot of turnovers. And NC State, where they've gone, and like I say, they figured it out the last 4 weeks of CJ Bailey at quarterback. Um, they're actually a 3-point state. I've got State as a 3-point favorite in this game, which is a bit of a surprise to me, but but I also think it's fair because I think this is a pretty even game in Raleigh. I think this is a legitimate toss-up game, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
I'd say 50-50. And if it were at Duke, I'd say Duke. If it were at NC State, I'd say NC State. So we know it's in Raleigh. So therefore, Wolfpack. Though I think you're right on top of that. I'm having a hard time picking either one of them, to be honest with you. Next one is revenge game. Just I'm two bitter old ladies coming at each other with handbags full of rolled quarters. Just angry birds. Um, Clemson at Virginia Tech. Uh,
That's
Ought
that's
to be a
quite the
Clemson.
analogy there, Jim.
Could be a Clemson. It should be a Clemson game. However, it's going to be at Virginia Tech, and both teams are coming off losses which stung. And so they're either going to be one of two things. They're either going to be deflated or they're going to be angry as hell.
Yeah, so this is all about to me, it's all about whether or not Kyron Jones and Bashal Tutin are healthy. They're healthy. I think Virginia Tech has a shot because where Clemson can be beat, especially, is in the run game. And we saw Louisville, like I said, they ran up for over 200 yards against them, and it's not the first time a team has run for over 200 yards against Clemson this year. They can be beat on the ground at times. Um, Clemson, I think they've got to have a serious talk about the way that offensive game plan was. I didn't think it was very good. I I would still take Clemson in this game, but am I looking at a 6.5 point spread and thinking they covered? I don't think it's a given right now. It's one of the ones that if I'm putting money on this game, I'm waiting until I hear something definitive about the status of Drones and Tootin.
Yeah, I would would be putting it at the last possible moment.
Yep.
FSU at Notre Dame. Oh,
When they made this, schedule upper before the season started, they're like, oh, Florida State, this should be a good game going into Notre Dame, prime time, NBC game. Notre Dame is a 25.5 point favorite.
and that's probably underdoing it.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I mean, it might be Notre Dame minus anything, whatever the schedule is, just kind of thinking of here's the thing with Notre Dame, their defense has been really, really good this year. They have given up over 20 points in a game once, and that was to Louisville. Like I said, they got a really good defense, and I think would it surprise me if Florida State score is in the single digits in this game? Absolutely not. This could be like a 34-7 type of game, really,
Or higher.
or less. I mean, I might be generous in giving Florida State a touchdown, honestly.
Yeah, 3 maybe. Anyway,
If they're lucky, yeah.
Not to pummel our Knoll buddies there.
Yeah.
Virginia at Pitt. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be going into Pitt after that loss.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously Virginia is coming off a bye, and I hope they do a little bit of self-reflection on that bye because they're gonna have to have a real hard talk about where the rest of the season's going to go. It's not easy, as we've mentioned, because they close the season with as you mentioned, Pitt, Notre Dame, SMU, and Virginia Tech. And we thought it was going to be kind of a murderer's row, before the season. Then it kind of got a little bit in the season. We're like, maybe not. They could win these games because Virginia was out to a 4-1 start and they looked good. And then you lose close to Louisville. You were competitive in losing to Clemson, and then forgot to show up against UNC. If I'm I'm worried. I mean, the line I have right here is Pitt 7.5. Give me Pitt. I think that's too. I would run that up in the double digits, to be honest with you.
Me too. Sorry who's, but
Got to be truthful.
yeah, I might go as high as 16. So I hate to say it.
Understood. Understandable. I get it.
It's just the situation coming into this game and what Pitt, how Pitt stunk up things this past week. Trust me, they're not going to be happy campers. Anyway, we'll see what happens. All right, that's our schedule. And as mentioned earlier in the podcast, we are going to run down all of the Olympic sports action that's going on in the ACC and what that leads up to. That includes men's and women's soccer. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Field hockey. There's ice hockey going on. It's not part of the ACC, but we're going to talk about that a little bit too. We're going to run down everything that's going on with sports with ACC schools as much as we can in a separate podcast. So be looking for that. That's coming up in the next day or so. And we'll give you an idea of how the ACC is doing. And I will say they are doing damn well. So go watch some basketball, folks. Season started, looks good, it's fun. We've got lots of stuff. Got great football going the next 4 weeks. Got tons of great basketball coming up, and a lot of championship action out of fall sports. And we're going into some exciting winter sports action as well, including wrestling. There's all kinds of stuff happening in the ACC. The sports is we're just chock full of stuff. It's a smorgasbord. So, all right.
Smorgasbord.
That's right. Until next time, cheers.
School.
Thanks for listening to ACC Nation. Be sure to listen, like and subscribe to our podcast, radio, and YouTube channels by visiting accnation.net. Follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, Mastodon, Threads, Blue Sky and Reddit at ACC Nation.
ACC Nation.